Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 2, Megan White. We warmly welcome the family of Flight Sergeant Frank Burton Elliott, whose story will be told shortly. We're honoured to acknowledge Mr. Arnaud Dussaucy, Deputy Head of Mission, Belgium Embassy. We're also honoured to acknowledge Vice Admiral Ben Key, Commander Joint Operations, United Kingdom, accompanied by Lieutenant General Greg Bilton, Chief of Joint Operations, Australia, and the accompanying Defence delegation. We warmly acknowledge the principal, students and staff of the 5th year technical and vocational training of the St Vincent's Institute of Onzium in West Flanders, Belgium, who will watch this ceremony as part of their 75th anniversary commemorations of the flying battle in which Flight Sergeant Elliott was killed. We warmly welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. And during this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you are able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant Frank Burton Elliott. Frank Elliott was born on the 1st of August 1922 in Mont Albert, Victoria, the only son of Kenyon, a local architect, and Dorothy Elliott. He had two younger sisters, Margaret and Lynette. Frank Elliott grew up in Mont Albert, and after attending the local primary school, went to Mont Albert Central School for 3 years, Box Hill High School for 1, and finally Scotch College, where he earned his leaving certificate in 1938. He was studious, but enjoyed sports, particularly tennis and cricket. He also competed in high jump for his school. Frank and his father shared a love of trains. They built their own railway in the backyard of their home. Several train stations were added, named after family members. After finishing school, Frank went to work for the Australasia Bank as a clerk. After working in the bank's Melbourne branch, he was posted to the Albury branch and then the Tallangatta branch. While he was at Albury, he struck up a friendship with Miss Norma Ruber, a student at Albury High School. On his first visit back home, his family noted that he'd started smoking a pipe. The second time he went home, he'd grown a moustache. He also began a course with Hemingway and Robertson's Correspondence School, studying accountancy and secretaryship. After the outbreak of the Second World War, Frank enlisted for service in the militia at Tallangatta in 1941, joining the 44th Battery of the 22nd Field Regiment, Royal Australian Artillery. But he had his heart set on joining the Royal Australian Air Force, and in July 1942, he applied to join the RAF and was accepted. On the 8th of October 1942, Burton, aged 20, travelled to the No. 1 recruiting centre in Melbourne, where he enlisted in the RAAF. After completing his initial employment training at Point Cook, Elliott was remustered for flying training and was sent to No. 1 Service Flying Training School at Uranquinty, New South Wales. This was Elliott's introduction to the Empire Air Training Scheme, a Commonwealth-wide effort to train flying crew for the war in Europe. Due to his lack of flying experience, his instructors thought he might be too young to be a pilot, but he persevered, and after 2 further postings to flight training schools, he was deemed ready for the next stage of his training. Elliott was given pre-embarkation leave at the end of May and returned home to Mont Albert. As a parting gift, his family presented him with a wristwatch, which had a black watch face with luminous hands. They thought this might be useful for any flying their son would do at night. Elliott embarked from Brisbane with the other RAF aircrew trainees on the 15th of June 1943, bound for Canada and further flight training. While in Canada, Elliott flew Harvard trainer and Hurricane fighter aircraft. He was awarded his flying badge on the 29th of October 1943 and was promoted to sergeant. He would be promoted to flight sergeant in late April 1944. During one of his periods of leave, he met Miss J. Courtemanche of Jonquière, north of Quebec City, and they began a relationship. The couple became engaged before Elliott's departure for England. He left on the 29th of May and reached his destination 9 days later. He could not have failed to notice the build-up by the Allies for D-Day. Elliott was initially posted to No. 57 Operational Training Unit, where he flew Spitfire fighters. After this, he was posted to No. 3 Tactical Exercise Unit, where he converted to the P-51 Mustang fighter. He spent the rest of 1944 in training until, on the 14th of December, he joined No. 122 Squadron, RAF, which was equipped with the Mark III P-51 Mustang fighters. No. 122 Squadron was involved in escort flights for bomber missions, and Elliott had taken part in 5 of these flights before the 7th of February 1945. As he was making ready to board his aircraft just before 2 p.m. on the 7th of February, the strap on Elliott's watch broke. As he handed the watch to a member of his ground crew, others jokingly said, "What will we do with it if you don't come back?" To which Elliott replied, Hang on to it. Soon after, 13 Mustang fighters of number 122 Squadron lifted off from RAF Andrews Field in Essex, England. Their mission was to rendezvous with the 100 Lancaster bombers of number 3 Group RAF over Belgium before escorting them into Germany. The bombers' mission was to destroy a synthetic oil plant at the German city of Vanekel. Elliott was number 6 in his flight, flying a P-51 Mustang Mark III, serial number Foxtrot X-ray 989. From the outset, the weather was poor, and where the fighters crossed the Belgian coast, they entered cloud cover at 800 feet, but climbed to over 25,000 feet, where they broke cloud cover. Elliott radioed his flight leader, and in a broken transmission, said that he had to return to England, mentioning something about his fuel. His flight leader asked Elliott if he needed an escort, to which the Australian replied that he was all right. 5 minutes later, his aircraft was heard in the clouds, apparently out of control in a spiral dive. It exploded before he broke cloud cover, and pieces of the wreckage were scattered around the area of the Belgian town of Ozium. Elliott's body, still trapped to his seat, landed in a field nearby. The villagers took Elliott's body to the chapel of the Zium Communal Cemetery, and he was laid to rest 3 days later in Kortrijk Communal Cemetery in Kortrijk, Belgium. He was 22 years old. 3 other Mustangs from different squadrons were also lost by the RAF that day in similar circumstances. One was flown by another Australian, Warrant Officer James Morgan Harris of Bathurst. Initially, investigators at the 3 crash sites thought the aircraft had collided, but the distances between each incident ruled that out. Mechanical failures combined with weather effects were found to be like the likely causes of each crash. The 4th crash site has never been located. Elliott's effects were sent home to his parents, but his parents noticed that his watch were not amongst the items returned. But return it would. The man that Elliott had handed the watch to before his fateful flight searched for Elliott's parents' contact details and sent the watch to them. One of Elliott's sisters, Lynette, wore the watch in memory of her brother until her death in 2019. In June 2019, after extensive research of Elliott's story and archaeological searches of the main crash site and surrounds, the people of Ozium unveiled a memorial stone to Frank Elliott in the field where his remains had been recovered in February 1945. The townspeople continue to tell the stories of Frank Elliott and other airmen who died in and around their town during the Second World War. Frank Elliott's name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant Frank Burton Elliott, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you're able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.